On December 22nd, 2025, President Donald Trump stood before reporters at Mar-a-Lago and declared unequivocally that the United States needs Greenland for national security, not primarily for its vast rare earth minerals, but to counter Russian and Chinese vessels prowling Arctic waters. He announced the appointment of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as the first ever U.S. Special Envoy exclusively to Greenland, tasking him to lead the charge in advancing American interests. Landry wasted no time, posting publicly that his mission is to make Greenland a part of the U.S. Denmark summoned the U.S. ambassador in outrage. The EU declared full solidarity with Copenhagen, and Greenland's leaders reaffirmed Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders. This isn't an impulsive tweet or diplomatic gaffe. This is the predictable, structurally inevitable escalation of a four-stage pattern that has governed every major great power territorial ambition in strategic choke points throughout modern history. A pattern driven by perceived vulnerability, resource control, and hegemonic anxiety. Stage 1, the setup. Emerging threats and opportunities expose a gap in the dominant power sphere. Stage 2, expansion. Rhetoric hardens, envoys and pressure campaigns deploy to probe weaknesses. Stage 3, crisis. Explicit rejection of sovereignty, diplomatic ruptures, threats of coercion. Stage 4, the inevitable outcome. Either forced accommodation, annexation by fait accompli, or catastrophic confrontation. Consider the cold facts framing today's crisis. Greenland, the world's largest island at over 2.1 million square kilometers, 80% ice-covered, hosts the U.S. Patuxent Space Base, formerly Thule, critical for missile warning and space surveillance. Melting Arctic ice has opened new shipping routes, shortening Asia-Europe transit by 40%, while exposing an estimated 13% of global undiscovered oil and vast deposits of rare earths, essential for batteries, wind turbines, and defense tech. China has invested heavily in mining bids. Russia expands northern fleets. U.S. presence dates to World War II purchases and Cold War bases. But Denmark retains sovereignty over this autonomous territory of 57,000 people. Trump's move, appointing a dedicated envoy bypassing Denmark, signals direct challenge, echoing his first-term purchase idea that canceled a state visit in 2019. This moment was foretold by the unforgiving logic of geopolitical competition. History proves the pattern relentlessly. Stage 1, the setup. The dominant power perceives strategic vulnerability in a key territory controlled by a weaker or allied state, combined with rising rival encroachment. Stage 2, expansion. Pressure builds through economic incentives, military posturing, and diplomatic envoys to assert influence and test resolve. Stage 3, crisis. Sovereignty rejected outright, coercion threatened, economic, military, or hybrid. Allies fracture, international norms strain. Stage 4, inevitable outcome. Territory absorbed, peacefully or forcibly, or war erupts. The map redraws under the victor's terms. This mechanism is universal, rooted in Thucydides' trap. Fear and honor drive empires to secure peripheries against rivals. Proof lies in history's unforgiving repetitions. 3 case studies, each mirroring the stages precisely. First, the U.S. acquisition of Alaska from Russia, 1867. Stage 1, setup. Post-Civil War. America eyes expansion. Russia, weakened by Crimean defeat and finances, fears British seizure of Alaska. U.S. Secretary of State William Seward sees strategic value blocking Russian Pacific power and securing northern flank. Stage 2, expansion. Negotiations accelerate. Seward pushes icebox deal despite domestic ridicule. Envoys broker $7.2 million treaty, about 2 cents times acre. Stage 3, crisis. Russian sovereignty ends abruptly. Critics decry Seward's folly, but Congress ratifies amid fears of rival claims. Stage 4, outcome. Alaska becomes U.S. territory, later state. Gold rushes and oil validate strategically. Russia accommodates financially strained position, verified. Second, Britain's seizure of the Falkland Islands sovereignty dispute escalation, leading to 1982 war. Stage 1, setup. Post-Suez Britain clings to empire remnants. Argentina views Malvinas as historic claim, vulnerable amid economic chaos. Stage 2, expansion. Diplomatic talks stall. Britain maintains garrison. Argentina probes with scientific stations and envoys signaling resolve. Stage 3, crisis. 1982. Argentine junta invades. Britain rejects sovereignty transfer, deploys task force. Stage 4, outcome war. Britain prevails, reaffirms control. Argentina accommodates defeat. Islands remain British overseas territory. Undeniable. Third, Japan's annexation of Korea, 1910. Stage 1, setup. Meiji. Japan rises. Korea's weakness invites Russian-Chinese influence post-Sino-Russo-Japanese wars. Stage 2, expansion. Protectorate Treaty, 1905. Japanese residents, investments, envoys dominate. Stage 3, crisis. 1910, ultimatum forces abdication, sovereignty dissolved amid protests. Stage 4, outcome. Korea colonized until 1945. Japan consolidates sphere until defeat resets. Check. These span continents, eras, ideologies, yet identical stages. Now apply systematically to Trump's Greenland push. Stage 1, setup, verified. Arctic melt accelerates. Northwest Passage, viable. China, near Arctic claims. Mining bids. Russia militarizes. U.S. Pituffik, vital, but Denmark controls. Trump's first-term interest revives 2025 amid second term. Check. Stage 2, expansion, undeniable. Vance visits Pituffik, March 2025. Influence reports August. Now dedicated envoy Landry, bypassing Denmark. First ever solely for Greenland. Verified. Stage 3, crisis, confirmed. Trump, we have to have it. Landry, make part of the U.S. Denmark summons ambassador, deeply upset. EU solidarity, Greenland, we decide our future. Undeniable. Stage 4 looms, accommodation, sale, lease, independence under U.S. umbrella, or escalation, economic coercion, base expansion, worse. Mathematical confirmation, present mirrors past precisely. Final warning, pattern absolute. Delusions crumble. Allies respect norms. Yet Monroe Doctrine extensions ignore. International law prevents. Crimea, Golan prove power prevails. Denmark NATO ally. Alliances bend to interests. Greenlanders oppose. Strategic necessity overrides. As Alaska natives or Falklanders. No. Machine demands resolution. Security dilemmas force action. Insight for survival. Recognize Stage 3, brink. To endure Stage 4, whether redraw or rupture. Decode architects next. Mineral lobbies, military imperatives, coercion playbook. If this revelation awakens, subscribe urgently. Alerts on. Next, hidden forces driving annexation, precise hedges for new order. Pattern closes. Discern or be redrawn by it. And the machine accelerates into Stage 4's unforgiving resolution, where rhetoric transforms into irreversible action and the map of power redraws itself under duress. As dawn breaks on December 23, 2025, Trump's appointment of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as the first ever U.S. This is Stage 4 crystallizing, the inevitable outcome where the dominant power forces accommodation or risks rupture. Extend the pattern's parallels to illuminate today's precipice. Consider the U.S. Panama Canal pursuit pre-1903. Stage 1, setup. Strategic need post-Spanish-American War. Colombia controls Isthmus. Stage 2, expansion. U.S. supports Panamanian rebellion via gunboats. Envoys negotiate. Stage 3, crisis. Revolution engineered November 1903. Colombia rejects sovereignty loss. Stage 4, outcome. Panama independence recognized instantly. Canal zone ceded perpetually. Map redrawn by coercion, or Britain's Cyprus annexation, 1914. Stage 1, Ottoman weakness invites Russian threat. Stage 2, 1878, lease for protection, envoys administer. Stage 3, WWI triggers formal annexation despite Ottoman protests. Stage 4, Cyprus British Crown colony until 1960. These affirm universality. Strategic peripheries yield to power when vulnerability meets ambition. In 2025's application, Stage 4 ramifies multidimensionally. Accommodation path, Denmark gets Greenland, concede expanded U.S. bases, mining rights, or quasi-protectorate in exchange for investment, echoing Alaska's peaceful transfer. Coercive variant, economic sanctions on Danish firms, base unilateral expansion, hybrid influence, reports of U.S. operations, already strained ties. Worst case, miscalculation spirals amid Russian-Chinese countermoves. Rare earths amplify stakes. Greenland's deposits could break China's 90% plus monopoly, vital for F-35s, wind turbines, EVs. Arctic routes threaten Suez-Panama dominance. Gold's surge to 4,180 thrower reflects this. Uncertainty premium as NATO fractures. Dismissals evaporate. NATO solidarity unbreakable. Yet Denmark's intelligence flagged U.S. as potential threat earlier 2025. International law sacrosanct. Crimea, Golan prove otherwise. Greenlanders will decisive. Strategic imperatives override, as Panama natives or Cypriots learned. Diplomacy resolves. Envoys like Landry signal end of talk. The pattern overrides sentiment. Power abhors unsecured flanks. Insight for endurance. Anticipate stage 4's forms. Alliance realignments. Asset flights. Gold's 20-25 ascent. Signals hedge. Rare earth miners poised for re-rating if U.S. secures supply. Position in Arctic exposed resilience. The machine nears judgment. Stage 4 forces new hierarchies. U.S. sphere expansion or costly stalemate. To navigate the redraw, who yields, what coercion unfolds, survival amid shift, decode the levers next. Mineral consortia, military contingencies, post-accommodation order. If this structural truth demands vigilance, subscribe immediately. Alerts essential. Next, veiled interests fueling the push, irrefutable positions for the transformed North. The pattern enforces. Align or be marginalized in its wake. And the machine inexorably propels us deeper into Stage 4's crucible, where declarations harden into fate's accomplice and strategic imperatives override sovereignty's fragile veneer. As markets digest the December 22nd, 2025 bombshell on this December 23rd morning, President Trump's Mar-a-Lago pronouncement naming Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry the inaugural U.S. Yet this is no aberration. It's Stage 4's structural imperative manifesting. The Arctic's rapid thaw, ice loss accelerating for the 29th year, has unlocked the northern sea route, slashing Asia-Europe transit times dramatically while exposing Greenland's trove, vast rare earth deposits potentially rivaling 25% of global undiscovered reserves, essential for F-35 jets, EV batteries, wind turbines, and breaking China's 90% plus processing dominance. Patuxent Space Base remains the linchpin for missile early warning, but rivals encroach. Russia's Northern Fleet expansions, Chinese mining bids and research stations. Trump's envoy bypasses Copenhagen entirely, signaling direct engagement, perhaps incentives, perhaps coercion. Extend the pattern to crystalline parallels. The U.S.-Hawaiian annexation. 1898, Stage 1, vulnerability, post-Spanish-American War. Stage 2, planter coups with naval support. Stage 3, sovereignty overridden amid protests. Stage 4, republic annexed, later statehood. Strategic Pacific pivot secured. Or France's Algeria integration, 1848-1962. Perceived integral territory despite resistance. Coercion until decolonization war forced reset. These illuminate. When hegemons deem peripheries existential, accommodation follows, peaceful or violent. In 2225's vortex, Stage 4 branches starkly. Peaceful yield, Denmark-Greenland barter expanded U.S. access, bases, mining concessions, for billions in investment, echoing proposed deals. Hybrid path, economic leverage on Danish exports, influence campaigns, 2025 reports flagged U.S. operations. Confrontational, unilateral action strain NATO, invite Russian, Chinese counters. Rare earths supercharge urgency. Greenland's tan breeze, Kvanefjeld projects hold heavy elements, scarce outside China, vital for defense diversification. Gold's ascent to $4,197 captures this premium. Tangible flight amid alliance fissures. Shatter remaining delusions. NATO unity prevails. Yet Denmark flagged U.S. as uncertainty source earlier 2025. Sovereignty inviolable. Panama, Hawaii prove power trumps. Greenland to consent required. Strategic calculus historically overrides, subsidies notwithstanding. Europe deters. Solidarity statements, but action lags. The pattern scorns restraint. Fear dictates securing flanks against rivals. Practical revelation for navigation. Stage 4 rewards foresight. Gold's parabola signals core hedge, rare earth exposure. Miners like critical metals eyeing Greenland assets, poised for explosive re-rating on access breakthroughs. Arctic logistics, defense plays amplify. The machine demands reconfiguration. Stage 4 will forge expanded U.S. sphere or fracture costs, map redrawn regardless. To master the coercion, who bends, what price extracted, resilience amid realignment, expose the undercurrents next. Lobbying networks, military contingencies, post-annexation blueprint. If this unyielding truth compels preparation, subscribe decisively. Alerts vital. Forthcoming, concealed stakeholders accelerating the claim, unbreakable fortifications for the Arctic reorder. The pattern inexorably concludes. Perceive its trajectory, or be subsumed in the geopolitical thaw, and the machine surges toward Stage 4's climactic reconfiguration, where strategic imperatives override alliances and sovereignty bends to the will of power. As global markets react on this December 23, 2025, President Trump's unyielding stance, we need Greenland for national security, We have to have it, delivered December 22nd at Mar-a-Lago, alongside the historic appointment of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as the inaugural U.S. Special Envoy dedicated solely to Greenland, has propelled the confrontation into overt coercion territory. Landry's explicit pledge to make Greenland a part of the U.S. triggered immediate backlash. Denmark summoned the U.S. ambassador, Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen, labeled it totally unacceptable, and expressed being deeply upset, while EU leaders Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa declared full solidarity with Denmark, affirming territorial integrity as inviolable. Greenland's Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, countered unequivocally, "Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders," insisting the envoy changes nothing for their self-determination. This is stage 4 in vivid operation, the inevitable outcome where vulnerability perception compels direct action, forcing either accommodation or escalation. The Arctic's rapid transformation, melting ice, opening northern sea routes that cut Asia-Europe shipping distances by 40%, exposes critical flanks. Greenland's trove of rare earth elements, among Europe's largest untapped reserves, offers potential to disrupt China's near monopoly on materials vital for defense systems, renewables, and advanced tech. The U.S. state-maintained Patuxent Space Base remains indispensable for early missile warning and space domain awareness, yet rival intrusions mount, Russia's aggressive northern fleet expansions, and China's persistent mining overtures under Der Karts near Arctic. Guys, amplify the pattern's historical echoes to forecast the path ahead. The U.S. engineered separation of Texas from Mexico. 1845. Stage 1. American settlers perceive opportunity amid Mexican weakness. Stage 2. Envoys encourage rebellion, military probes. Stage 3. Independence declared, annexation demanded. Stage 4. War 1846-48. Treaty ceding vast territories. Sphere expanded by force. Or Soviet absorption of the Baltic states 1940. Vulnerability exploited amid the Tubu chaos. Envoys install puppet regimes. Sovereignty rejected. Outcome of incorporation until 1991 dissolution. These demonstrate the mechanism's ruthlessness. When great powers deem territories essential, resistance yields to realignment. In 2025's intensifying drama, Stage 4 branches starkly. Conciliatory resolution. Denmark and Greenland negotiate enhanced U.S. access, expanded Patuxent operations, joint mining ventures, in exchange for investment and security guarantees, preserving nominal sovereignty akin to historical leases. Aggressive trajectory, economic pressure on Danish trade, unilateral base enhancements, or hybrid tactics building on reported 2025 influence efforts. Catastrophic fork. Opportunistic Russian or Chinese maneuvers provoke broader Arctic contest, risking miscalculation in contested waters. Gold hold above 4,180 embeds the risk premium. Tangible refugee as NATO's cohesion strains and resource nationalism resurges. Ultimate refutations seal the case. Diplomatic norms constrain, yet envoys like Landry herald norm erosion. Economic ties bind allies. Tariffs and coercion sever. Public opinion blocks. Strategic calculus historically marginalizes it, as in Hawaii or Panama. Military force unthinkable among allies. Trump's refusal to rule it out echoes precedents. The pattern devours restraint. Honor and fear dictate perimeter security. Prescience demands preparation. Monitor Stage 4 indicators. Envoy deployments, sanction hints, base activities. Assets thriving on discord flourish. Gold's trajectory, rare earth proxies, Arctic infrastructure plays. The machine exacts its verdict. Stage 4 heralds redefined polar dominion, U.S. ascendancy or fragmented rivalry. To master the transition, who concedes, what instruments wield, resilience in the reordered North, unmask the operatives next, resource cabals, doctrinal contingencies, the emergent hemispheric blueprint. If this inexorable insight mandates action, subscribe with conviction. Alerts crucial. Imminent. The concealed alliances propelling the annexation drive and unbreakable postures for the Arctic's transformation. The pattern culminates. Comprehend its inevitability or be relegated in the reshuffle. And what comes next is not speculation, it is sequencing. Stage 4 never arrives all at once. It unfolds through calibrated steps designed to exhaust resistance before force is ever required. First comes normalization. The envoy embeds. Meetings multiply. Technical cooperation expands. Security upgrades quietly turn permanent. Joint task forces blur lines of sovereignty. What begins as access becomes dependency. What is framed as protection becomes leverage. Next comes economic gravity. Infrastructure funding. Rare earth processing facilities under U.S. financing. Employment pipelines tied to American defense supply chains. Greenland's budget, already heavily subsidized, tilts decisively toward Washington rather than Copenhagen. At that point, political reality shifts regardless of public statements. Sovereignty survives on paper, but power migrates in practice. This is how modern annexation works, not through flags and parades, but through systems. Control the radar, the ports, the logistics, the minerals, the capital flows, and the outcome is predetermined. Formal declarations come last, if they come at all. Denmark understands this. That is why the reaction was immediate and furious, not because words were spoken, but because the sequence was recognized. Once a great power elevates a territory to a standalone strategic theater, reversal becomes nearly impossible without confrontation. The envoy is not the message. The envoy is the mechanism. Greenland's leaders will resist rhetorically. Europe will issue statements. NATO will urge calm. But none of these actors possess the decisive leverage required to halt Stage 4 once it has begun. They can slow it. They cannot stop it, unless they are willing to pay a cost far higher than the territory itself. And that is the final truth history teaches. Outcomes are determined not by who is right, but by who is willing to absorb pain. The United States views the Arctic as an existential frontier. Missile defense, space dominance, resource security, and maritime control converging into a single theater. Russia and China agree. Denmark does not have the capacity to contest that reality. Greenland does not have the power to escape it. So the machine moves forward. Whether the resolution is labeled enhanced partnership, strategic autonomy, or something far blunter is almost irrelevant. The map may not change overnight, but control will. And markets, as always, see it first. That is why capital is moving. That is why volatility is repricing. That is why gold does not ask permission. This is not about Greenland alone. It is about the return of hard geopolitics in an era that pretended it had outgrown it. Stage 4 is not a question. It is a phase. Those who recognize the pattern early adapt. Those who deny it become collateral. The Arctic is no longer frozen, and neither is history. What unfolds from here will not be announced on podiums or tweeted in capital letters. It will emerge quietly through memorandums, basing agreements, joint ventures, and temporary security measures that never quite expire. This is how Stage 4 consolidates itself, not with shock, but with inevitability. The first visible shift will be operational. U.S. military presence at Pituffik will expand under the justification of modernization and redundancy. New radar arrays, extended runways, dual-use infrastructure labeled civilian but designed for rapid militarization. Officially, nothing changes. In practice, Greenland becomes indispensable to U.S. force projection in the Arctic. Denmark remains sovereign in theory, but operational control migrates south across the Atlantic. Simultaneously, economic integration deepens. American-backed mining consortia re-enter projects once stalled by environmental or political resistance. Processing facilities are proposed not as extraction, but as green transition partnerships. Jobs follow, revenues follow. Greenland's economic gravity tilts decisively toward Washington. Autonomy, once framed as distance from Denmark, begins to look like proximity to the United States. This is the quiet genius and danger of modern power. No invasion is required when alignment can be engineered. Europe will attempt mediation. Statements will emphasize rules-based order, indigenous rights, and alliance unity. But behind closed doors, reality intrudes. Europe lacks the naval reach, Arctic logistics, and risk tolerance to counterbalance American determination in this theater. Solidarity has limits, geography does not. Russia and China will not remain passive observers. Moscow will accelerate Arctic militarization, citing NATO encroachment. Beijing will expand scientific missions and commercial stakes, framing itself as a stabilizing economic partner. Each move justifies the next. The security dilemma tightens. Every actor insists they are reacting, never initiating. This is how strategic traps close. At some point, Greenland itself faces the impossible choice history has imposed on small territories caught between giants. Resist and risk economic isolation, accommodate and surrender practical sovereignty. There is no third path. There never has been. Autonomy under great power competition is not a destination. It is a bargaining chip. Critically, none of this requires public consent to function. Democratic processes slow outcomes. Strategic necessity accelerates them. Deals are framed as technical. Decisions are compartmentalized. By the time populations realize what has changed, the infrastructure of control is already in place. And that is when formal politics catches up with informal reality. Perhaps a referendum on enhanced partnership. Perhaps a new security compact. Perhaps nothing explicit at all, just a gradual normalization where American presence becomes as unquestioned as the ice once was permanent. History shows that annexation does not always need a name to be real. The implications extend far beyond the Arctic. If Greenland becomes effectively integrated into the U.S. strategic sphere, the precedent reverberates globally. Allies learn that geography outweighs sentiment. Rivals learn that pressure works. Neutral territories understand that strategic value is a liability, not a shield. This accelerates a broader unraveling of the post-Cold War illusion that borders are fixed, that power has been tamed by norms, that economics replaced force. 2025 has shattered that myth. The return of spheres of influence is not theoretical. It is operational. Markets, once again, are the early warning system. Capital is not ideological. It moves towards safety, scarcity, and control. Gold's relentless ascent is not a bubble, it is a signal, a referendum on trust, a hedge against systems under strain. So when analysts ask, will the US really take Greenland? They are asking the wrong question. The correct question is, at what point does resistance become more costly than acceptance? History's answer is always the same. By the time Stage 4 is recognized publicly, it is already too late to stop. The outcome may wear diplomatic language, but the power shift is irreversible. Maps may remain unchanged. Control does not. This is the moment we are living through now. Not a crisis yet, but a convergence. The kind that decides decades. Understanding this is not about prediction. It is about preparation. Because the same logic reshaping Greenland will apply elsewhere. Strategic islands, resource corridors, space infrastructure, digital choke points. Anywhere vulnerability intersects with ambition, the machine activates. Ignore it, and events feel chaotic. Recognize it, and the pattern becomes unmistakable. This channel exists to decode those patterns before headlines do, to strip away comforting narratives and expose the mechanics underneath. Not to provoke fear, but to replace surprise with clarity. If you found this analysis valuable, if it helped you see beyond the news cycle and into the structure of power, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications.